Welcome back to Bugs, Buzz, and Beyond. Today, we're diving into one of nature's many mysteries, moths and the dust on their wings. Have you ever noticed how, when you touch a moth, a fine powder rubs off onto your fingers? Have you ever wondered what that dust is, why it's there, and how it helps the moth? In today's episode, we'll explore the fascinating science behind this natural phenomenon. Stick around until the end, because we'll also have a fun trivia quiz where you can test your knowledge and learn even more fascinating facts. Let's get started. Let's begin with the basics. What exactly is the dust on a moth's wings? That dust is not actually dust at all. It's made up of countless tiny scales. These scales are incredibly small and delicate, and they are composed of a material called chitin. Chitin is the same tough, lightweight substance that forms the outer shell of most insects. These scales are arranged in overlapping layers on the moth's wings, much like shingles on the roof of a house. They're not all the same either. The scales vary in size, shape, and even color, giving each moth its own unique wing pattern. These intricate patterns range from subtle earth tones to dazzling, vibrant hues, making moths one of the most diverse groups of insects when it comes to appearance. You might be wondering, what's the point of these scales? Are they just for decoration, or do they serve a bigger purpose? The truth is, these scales play several critical roles in the moth's survival. One of their most important functions is camouflage. Many moths rely on their wing patterns to blend in with their surroundings. For example, a moth with brown speckled wings might rest on a tree trunk during the day, where it's nearly invisible to predators like birds. But scales don't just help with blending in. They can also make a moth stand out. Some species, like the garden tiger moth, have bright, bold colors on their wings. These colors warn predators that the moth might be toxic or taste bad, a strategy known as aposematism. Scales also help with flight. They make the moth's wings lightweight and aerodynamic, allowing the insect to fly smoothly and efficiently. If a moth loses a few scales, it won't be grounded. They're designed to shed easily without compromising the moth's ability to fly. Here's something fascinating. The scales on moth wings can help them escape from sticky situations. Literally. If a moth gets trapped in a spider's web, it has a secret weapon. The scales on its wings are designed to come off easily. So, when the moth struggles to free itself, the scales stick to the web while the moth escapes. It's a clever survival tactic that saved countless moths from becoming spider snacks. But that's not all. These scales also help moths regulate their body temperature, which is especially important for nocturnal species. As cold-blooded creatures, moths can't generate their own heat. Instead, their scales help them absorb or reflect light, keeping them warm when it's chilly or cool when it's too hot. This ability to adapt to temperature changes makes moths resilient nighttime flyers. Believe it or not, the tiny scales on moth wings aren't just important to the moth. They've also inspired some incredible human innovations. Scientists have studied the unique structure of moth scales to develop new materials and technologies. One fascinating application is in the field of solar energy. Moth scales have special properties that manipulate light in remarkable ways, helping moths create shimmering, iridescent colors. By studying these properties, scientists have found ways to design more efficient solar panels that can absorb more light. The scales have also influenced the development of advanced textiles and energy-efficient windows. Who would have thought that such tiny, delicate structures could inspire such groundbreaking innovations? It's yet another example of how nature can teach us how to solve some of our biggest challenges. You might be wondering, what happens to a moth if it loses its scales? Maybe you've accidentally touched a moth before and noticed that the dust rubs off onto your fingers. While losing some scales won't immediately harm the moth, it can make it more vulnerable. Without its scales, a moth might struggle to camouflage itself as effectively, making it an easier target for predators. It might also lose some of its ability to escape from spider webs or regulate its body temperature. That's why it's always a good idea to admire moths from a distance and avoid handling them whenever possible. Now, it's time to see how much you've learned from today's episode. We've got 3 fun trivia questions coming up. Ready? Let's start. Question number 1. What is the dust on a moth's wings made of? The correct answer is C. Scales. The fine powder you see on a moth's wings is not dust in the traditional sense, but rather a collection of thousands of tiny scales. These scales are incredibly delicate and are made of chitin, the same material that forms the hard shells of insects. They are arranged in overlapping layers, giving moths their unique patterns and colors. These scales aren't just decorative. They serve crucial purposes such as aiding flight, providing camouflage, and even helping moths escape predators like spiders. Without these intricate scales, a moth's survival would be significantly more challenging. Question number 2. What is one way moth wing scales help with survival? The correct answer is B. They help moths escape from spider webs. Moth scales have a fascinating survival mechanism. When a moth becomes trapped in a sticky spider web, its wing scales are designed to easily detach. This means that as the moth struggles to free itself, the scales stick to the web while the moth manages to escape. This clever adaptation allows the moth to avoid being eaten, giving it a second chance at life. While the moth loses some scales in the process, it can still fly and continue its nightly adventures. This survival strategy is an excellent example of how even the smallest features in nature can have profound purposes. Question number 3. What human invention was inspired by moth wing scales? The correct answer is B. Solar panels. The unique structure of moth wing scales has been a source of inspiration for cutting-edge human inventions. These scales have special properties that manipulate light, creating iridescent colors and enhancing light absorption. Scientists studying moth scales have applied this knowledge to solar panel technology, designing surfaces that can capture and use more sunlight effectively. This innovation has made solar panels more efficient and sustainable, paving the way for advancements in renewable energy. It's incredible how something as small as a moth's wing scale can inspire solutions to some of humanity's most pressing challenges, such as reducing our dependence on fossil fuels. Thank you for watching. If you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution.